Swadika, greetings from Thailand. I wish I could be with you all in person right now, but hopefully you can see me and that my face won't dissolve like it has done a time or two on Zoom. Now, for those of you who might not know who I am or why I'm speaking to you from Thailand, let me give you a little background first. I left Chico right around a year ago at this time. I knew I wanted to travel the world and go discover different sites and be like a vagabond where I interviewed people, I wrote about them, and I just traveled on. And eventually I was going to come to the country of Malaysia in the spring, where I would establish a CSL presence and then come home for a long summer break, visiting family and all my friends. And then I was going to come back and see what I could do. But as we know, when we make plans, God laughs. The theme for your month is called In Discovering the Ineffable. And I have the definition here, which says, incapable of being expressed or described in words. That's so fitting for right now, because when I thought of how I could begin to share what's occurred in this past year, it truly seemed ineffable. How could I summarize in a 15-minute talk all that's gone on? And also to display how much sympathy I have for all of you who've gone through so much suffering, especially when you're experiencing wildfires at the same time. But I realized I couldn't just sit and stare at the screen for 15 minutes. That would be a little awkward, and Reverend Kathy might not like that. So I'm going to do the best I can to put it in pictures and in words. Now, the title of my talk is It's a Small World After All. And I thought of this because as I went from country to country, I noticed that there were so many things that I saw that we all had in common back in Chico. It was kind of like different characters, different food and language, but so many of the same themes, how we all cared about our families, we wanted the best for our loved ones, and we were trying to make things work the best that we can. So if you can, I want you to try and see this now, because I started thinking maybe this could be a metaphor for what we're going through in life right now. We're kind of all wrapped up in this giant amusement park, wandering around. But instead of the word amusement, a better word is bemusement, which basically means to be puzzled or confused or wondering what's going on, having more questions than answers. So if you will, let's see what this bemusement park is like. Now I know for myself, when I first got on it, I started thinking that we're perhaps on a monorail, kind of going around where it's nice and safe. We're looking above all the drama, the excitement, the scary rides. But after a while, it gets a little bit boring. We're seeing the same sights. We're not changing or growing, not expanding who we are. So we decide to get off the monorail and climb aboard some of the rides. Now, I did choose the Small World ride. I always liked the song that it had. You know, it's a world of laughter, a world of fun. A smile means friendship to everyone, except for a few months back on the Italian subway. A smile did not mean friendship to that guy. So as we go along, we began to discover that there are different colorful sights. And in my world, on my ride, I went to Denmark first, and I saw all these incredible people that opened their homes to me, shared their food, their customs. I went on to northern Germany, where I was also taken in, and I got to see the history of the place. It was like being on a merry-go-round, where things were rather fun. It wasn't painful, except for when I got kilometers and miles mixed up. And it was a very long bike ride that day. But I had people showing me their lives, and it was a beautiful experience. So maybe for you, too, on your ride BC before COVID, you were kind of doing the same things on that ride. You knew what to expect. You knew the people you would see, the places you'd go to. Well, eventually, I wanted a little more excitement. So I got into that wild mystery house, the one with the mirror maze, where eventually, perhaps you were there too, you start to get a little confused, wondering what you're doing in life, whether you're on the right path. Are you bumping into your own reflection time and time again? Do you want to change what you're seeing? Well, I felt like I needed a clear sign, a clear manifestation that I was on my right path, that I was going where I needed to go. And so right after thinking this, I turned the corner and I saw this sign right in front of me. So I figured I'll keep going. I don't know what signs you've been seeing this past year, but for me, this was an important one to direct me onward. Your book of the month, Intimacy with God by Thomas Keating, he states, "We must seek God more and more in the present moment, which is in fact the only place where God can be found." So right here, in this present moment, is the moment of power, where God is. But, I was in an amusement park. I was asking questions. I wanted to see where God might also be. So I looked for God in those big fancy cathedrals. I looked for God in old friends and animals and being out in nature. I found God in new friends. This small world ride kept on showing me lots of beautiful things and kind-hearted people along the way. I also saw similarities to how people experience God in their own cultures. They too would build big temples to try and find God. They'd practice all the rituals. They would go and splash water on themselves or immerse themselves in water like we've done with baptisms. That experience of wanting to be intimate with God through rituals or customs. I also found God in the sweet elderly lady who would show up early every morning, herding her goats. She was a hard worker. She had years of excitement and adventure, but she was determined to be out in the world every day, despite how hard things got. I also found God in my small world ride when people would celebrate the Festival of Lights, the season of Diwali. It reminded me of how we have the Hanukkah traditions and our own celebration of lights back home. Those little rituals that make us feel more intimate with God. I also realized that on my small world, I could also share about mine. And I brought the custom of Thanksgiving to my guest house in November. I brought food and I invited everybody to share a little something and then talk about what they were grateful for in their life. It was a blessing to us all. I discovered that the Indians also have their own harvest festival where they celebrate the harvesting of rice, and they create a big boiled pot of rice, and when it boils over, they all yell Pungal, and it's their Pungal festival. When my rice boils over, I usually yell for help and know that I'm not going to have dinner there that night. But they do so many similar things that we have, sitting and breaking bread together, or breaking chapatis, as this case is, and just getting to know people on a true, intimate, heart-to-heart level. I also knew that in this particular ride, the joy of Santa was alive and well. Now, this particular Santa actually had a hardship coming to school. He hit a cow. Well, the cow was okay, but Santa's car, not so much. So on your rides, where you're making those connections, you're seeing people, you're experiencing the rituals, you're knowing that there are basic things that you love doing over and over again. Maybe it's that merry-go-round that you truly love being on because you know what to expect. But then you also aren't too sure what to expect. I think there's a ride called Future World or Tomorrowland in Disneyland where people think about what tomorrow will be. So we all came together to celebrate the new year, to think of all the possibilities that 2020 would bring. And then I went on another ride. I decided to go on to Thailand. And it was a beautiful place, beautiful sunsets. It was once again being back on that merry-go-round. Everybody could ride it. You didn't have to be 4 feet tall. It was serene. I could take long walks and connect with others in a spiritual, peaceful way. But then COVID hit Thailand. And as we were locked down and put in quarantine and also had curfews, I felt truly trapped. And on an energetic, vibrational level, I became very frustrated with being locked down. In fact, my body picked up on it, around me picked up on it. And one morning when I was trying to get out of my room to go have breakfast, I was literally trapped into my room because the lock, similar to this one, got jammed and I couldn't get out. I had to squeeze my hand out and wave to somebody to help break the lock. Well, this downward spiral seemed to continue as I later tripped on a cement block, breaking my toe. And I thought, why is the universe trying to slow me down even more than I already am? What's going on? And then I felt even worse when this big, giant dragon-looking thing came down from my ceiling onto the wall, and I knew that he probably wanted to eat me, and I couldn't run away from him, so it'd be an easy catch, except he just turned out to be a harmless gecko, but it was scary at the time. I really felt like I was a victim. I was on the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom ride. My flight had been canceled twice. Did you ever feel like that this past year? Like things just kept on coming at you? This doomsday ride was throwing more and more at you than you could handle? If you were like me, it kind of just felt like at rock bottom. Thomas Keating says, every time we move to a new level of faith, there is an initial experience of disintegration, distress, confusion, and darkness. If we are not forewarned about the spiritual journey, it feels like something has gone wrong. Our attitude towards ourselves, other people, and God. Experiences that our life just does not work anymore at that level. We are challenged or forced to move to a deeper level. So maybe you felt a bit like I did, where you felt like you couldn't go on at the same level you were at. In fact, the path before me felt literally broken. I could no longer get to where I needed to be by looking at the conditions. And that's when I realized I had to go deeper. I meditated more. I contemplated more. I read more. Thomas Keating goes on to state, as we journey more deeply inward, its effects lead us powerfully outward toward the capacity to relate to one another with the unconditional love with which Christ relates to us. Well, eventually I began to heal, and I saw new possibilities. Even though the path wasn't perfect, I saw that it could take me where I needed it to go. My toe began to heal. I was able to walk out to the beach and connect with others. I also knew that Thailand, which had locked down so quickly, was now beginning to open up again. I was able to connect with that Buddhist nature, that Christ nature in others. And it felt so good to get out and see friends again, or surrogate friends that had really comforted me during the lockdown time. I felt at one with life again. I felt like everything was connected, the sea and the sky and life, knowing that perhaps there was something deeper going on here. Perhaps there was something more in this bemusement park if I just could keep on asking the right questions, and knowing that this too shall pass. this ride wasn't going to be so scary forever. I hopped on another ride, which was a little more like a Ferris wheel, began to go quicker. I had to look around me and keep up with things as I came up to Chiang Mai, knowing that things were at a higher speed up here. But then I saw that there were more temples, and they weren't just temples of doom. They were temples pointing toward the light. I could bloom where I was planted. Ernest Holmes states, as your consciousness lifts itself above the problem into a spiritual atmosphere of affirmation, the problem as such disappears and the answer takes its place. Every problem contains its own answer if you think of the problem merely as a question, an inquiry, and not as an obstruction. Thinking of it this way keeps your mind not on the repetition of thoughts about the problem, but on the receipt of a definite answer. So live in that expectation of an answer, knowing that there is the right evolvement that will occur. So as we go along in this bemusement park, we see the sign, ride under construction, not obstruction. So what kind of ride are you creating for the future? I know that as I focus on what I want to create in this world, not what I don't want, I get that we truly have far more in common than our differences. If we could celebrate our similarities and know that we're all connected, then I think that this ride that I envision will be one of peacefulness, love, and prosperity for all. I can't wait to hug you all again. Blessings, namaste, and sawadee ka.